Hi everyone, my name is Jolene. I am known as AspergerWorld. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about change and how change impacts me as an autistic woman. So first of all, it is one of the most well-known traits of autism is that autistic people struggle to process change, and this usually refers to change in a routine. But for me, specifically for me, the thing I find the most difficult about change is not actually change in routine, but a change in what is expected of me. So, for instance, I also struggle with change in routine, but if I am expecting to do something and I can't do that thing, then I cannot process what I then need to do and then process the solutions to the problem to then help myself, because I have quite poor social imagination and problem solving skills, and I find it very difficult to process information and make connections, which means that trying to come up with those solutions to something that has changed from what I was expecting to do is very difficult for me. So as a little example of something that happened to me earlier today is that part of what I was expecting to do was get out my notebook and draw, because I'm drawing a lot lately and it's something that I find very therapeutic. So it was something that I was expecting to do. But everything got very difficult when I realised that my notebook was actually stacked underneath a big pile of things. And because it was stacked underneath the big pile of things, that created so much pressure in my mind that I couldn't work out how to actually solve that problem. So even though it wasn't a change in routine, it was barely a change in what was expected of me, but because I couldn't easily access this thing I was expecting to do, that became a change, and it also became an injustice because I couldn't then process the information to establish what the solution was. And the solution was very, very simple. All I had to do was move maybe 4 books from the top of my notebook and then take my notebook and start doing what I was expecting to do. But I couldn't process that information, I couldn't make those connections, and I ended up just staring at it for about 10 minutes, just stood there staring at my notebook underneath all of these books and just trying to work out what to do, and I couldn't work it out. And that is basically how my autism impacts me when it comes to change. I just can't process that information. And another example is that, which is another quite daft one really, is I have a memory of being a young teenager, and it's the morning before school and I'm getting ready, and part of my routine and part of what I was expecting to do in the morning was to put my lunchbox in my bag and then put my coat on. But everything gets very difficult when I tried to put my lunchbox in my bag and there wasn't enough room. The lunchbox wouldn't fit. And I'm there trying to put it in the bag, and it's getting so... I got very anxious and very stressed, and I was starting to cry, I was starting to stim. And my mum, who could see my distress and she could see the problem I was having with completing this very easy task, that obviously wasn't easy to me. And so she tried to help the situation by saying, "Don't worry about the lunchbox, put your coat on instead." And what she didn't know is that in her saying that without clarifying that she was going to help, by her saying that, she had actually created a change and an injustice in one go. So I couldn't stop doing what I was doing because it was what was expected of me. It was my routine. I had to carry on trying to put the lunchbox in the bag. But because I was unable to do it, I was then unable to process what might help, unable to work out the solution, such as take everything out of the bag that doesn't need to be in there and put the lunchbox in. And so that was the change in what was expected of me, stopping me from being able to work out how to put the lunchbox in the bag. But then my mum, trying to help, had caused a big injustice, because it wasn't right that I moved on to put my coat on before completing that first task of putting my lunchbox in my bag. It was incorrect and it was wrong, and I cannot handle injustice. So it would have appeared like I was ignoring her. And I just remember her telling me it, and everything just went blurry, and all the colours saturated around me and everything was pixelated, and her voice started to sound like it was kind of tinny or like far away, and I was going in very, very quickly into an overload and a shutdown. And it would have been very different if she had explained to me very specifically and precisely that she would have put the lunchbox in the bag for me so I can put my coat on. But she didn't, because she obviously didn't realise that what she was saying was something that could cause few more harm than good. And it's one of those examples that is so little but also so big at the same time. Like, the impact on me meant that I couldn't go to school that day because I was too busy crying on the floor of my hallway, to completely unable to process any information that could help. And it's this sort of thing that change is more than just a change in routine. It's more than just, you know, the very obvious changes that people might face. It's the tiny changes too. Like, a change in toothbrush is scary for me. A change in toothpaste is scary for me because it tastes different and there's sensory issues with it too. And recently, my husband changed his facial hair. I'm used to him having a big beard and I love it. But he changed his facial hair and he cut most of his beard off, and it took me about 5 days to be able to recognise him as safe again, because that change was too much for my brain to physically and mentally process. That it was like I was looking at a new person and I just couldn't handle it. And little things like that. Change is a very big issue for me, but it's all those little tiny changes that impact me too. So yeah, not just change in routine, it's a change in what is expected of me. If I'm expecting to do something and that changes, then all of my processing goes out the window. My social imagination gets worse and I just shut down. If I'm expecting to work at home and I get an unexpected visitor, this happened recently actually, I was expecting to work on a speech at home and my mum, bless her, she turned up completely out of the blue to help me. But because she turned up out of the blue, I was totally unable to process anything and I shut down very quickly, and I was then so upset, like in meltdown mode, screaming and crying because I had this massive deadline, which is the whole reason she came over to help me. But because she came over and it represented a change in what I had to do and what I had to cope with, even though she was there to help me, it represented that change, because in her being there, I then had to focus on her. I had to focus my energies on how to communicate, how to be a good host, and, you know, how to be a good human being. And it was a change in what was expected of me. And the consequence of that little tiny change, where she was trying her best, and she just, you know, she was trying her best. And that change caused me to be completely unable to do any work for the rest of the day, and I was in meltdown mode, and by the time she'd left I was just now screaming and crying at myself and just so upset. And then I just slept for the next day, just in recovery from that meltdown, from that tiny change. And that is something that is a change of what's expected of me, but it's not actually a change in routine. So that's me, that's how change impacts me. I don't know what to add. If you relate to anything I've said, leave me a comment and we can have a little chat. I hope you like my video, and I will see you on my next upload. Bye!